We begin with this tonight. Is the drug that is used to kill dogs and cats in your dog's food? It is a question that senior investigative reporter Lisa Fletcher set out to answer 7 months ago.
Well, tonight we have her explosive results, and Lisa is here with that now. Lisa?
Allison and John, the FDA just confirmed it will investigate and take enforcement action against the company we're exposing as having the euthanasia drug Pentobarbital in its food. And while that is an excellent proactive response, the agency charged with protecting what we and our pets consume has a poor history of keeping pet food free of contaminants.
Nobody should have to go through what we went through. Nobody. It's not fair. I mean, I would give anything to see Tallulah again.
New Year's Eve 2016 was no celebration for Nikki Mail and her family.
They were falling over, they were running into the walls, they were convulsing.
Within minutes of sharing a can of Evinger's pet food among her 5 dogs, she was racing the lifeless animals to the emergency vet.
They said that they weren't sure that what was going on, but it didn't look good.
Hours later, devastating news.
They said that Tallulah wasn't going to make it.
Desperate for answers, they sent the remainder of the food to a specialized lab and drove Tallulah's lifeless body to a veterinary pathologist for a post-mortem examination.
Poisoning from the dog food, that's what killed her.
But it wasn't just any poison. It was pentobarbital, a lethal drug most commonly used to euthanize dogs, cats, and some horses. The deadly toxin is never permitted to kill animals that are part of the food supply and would violate federal law if it was.
Pet food violates federal law, is openly allowed by the FDA to violate federal law. Billion-dollar-a-year companies are making profit selling illegal adulterated products to unknowing consumers in the U.S. every day.
Susan Thixton has been studying and writing about the pet food industry for decades.
Do consumers have the information they need to make safe choices about pet food?
They have no information. A consumer has to become a private detective to learn what's really in their food.
So we decided to find out. We partnered with Ellipse Analytics, a lab that specializes in testing food for contaminants. Founder Kevin Hicks.
I think you have a duty to understand what you're selling to human beings and pets. And I think that the obligation is on you to understand what is and is not in your product.
We tested 62 samples of wet dog food across more than 24 brands for the euthanasia drug Pentobarbital. After months of tests and retests, one brand came back positive for pentobarbital over and over again. In total, we tested 15 cans of Gravy Train. 9 cans, 60% of the sample, were positive for pentobarbital. And while the levels detected were not lethal, under federal law, they are also not permitted at any concentration. Gravy Train is made by Big Heart Pet Foods and owned by Smuckers. According to Nielsen data, it accounts for more than $40 million of the company's annual revenue. Their website touts high-quality food that meets rigorous evaluation and testing requirements. So, how is pentobarbital, a drug not allowed to be used on animals intended for food, getting into the food?
Comes from euthanasia of animals using that euthanasia drug. So these animals could be dogs, they could be cats, they could be horses. But how is it getting into the pet food? If they say it doesn't come from dogs and cats and horses, where does it come from? It doesn't come from outer space.
Dr. Nicholas Dodman is the Chief Scientific Officer for the Center for Canine Behavior Studies. He is the former director of the Animal Behavior Program at Tufts University. He says the level of pentobarbital in the food is really beside the point.
Whether it's doing something or nothing, what's it doing there? Where did it come from? If they don't like the explanation is coming from animals that have been euthanized, what is their explanation as to how it gets in there?
A question neither the FDA nor Smuckers would answer. One possibility? Experts tell us the animals that have been euthanized are picked up by renderers who process the carcasses, which may be blended into pet food. In a 2004 report to Congress, sources for rendered materials were identified as, among other things, dead animals from farms, animal shelters, and other facilities. Under federal law, these are adulterated ingredients. Adulterated ingredients, which are defined partly as an animal which has died otherwise than by slaughter, are illegal in all food for humans and animals. Yet in its own compliance policy, the FDA acknowledges it is violating the law and states pet food consisting of material from diseased animals or animals which have died otherwise than by slaughter, which is in violation of 402A5, will be considered fit for animal consumption.
FDA tells industry, yeah, it's a violation of law, but go ahead, we're not going to do anything.
We asked the FDA to explain its policy that is allowing adulterated ingredients into pet food. They declined. We asked Smucker's to answer a series of questions about its quality control, suppliers, and testing of its products. The company chose not to respond to any of our questions, but did provide a written statement that in part says, "We launched and are conducting a thorough investigation, including working closely with our suppliers to determine the accuracy of these results and the methodology used."
I don't trust any dog food companies anymore, and reading that the law is not enforced and it's just kind of, they kind of do their own thing. I need to make sure that they're eating human grade food.
Since Tallulah's death, Nikki's been making pet food at home, so she knows exactly what's in it.
I miss Tallulah a lot. Not fair. But I hope that other animals can be saved by this.
FDA tests show is responsible for Tallulah's death. Our tests came back negative. You can read full responses from both Smucker's and the FDA on the ABC7 smartphone app or on our website. We've posted the questions that we posed to both that went unanswered. If you're concerned about pet food safety, you can call the FDA, Smucker's, and their subsidiary Big Heart Brands, which makes Gravy Train. You will find all of that information on our app as well.
So, Lisa, you mentioned there that Smucker's says they're looking into the accuracy of your results. So tell us, who did your testing?
So we used two highly accredited analytical labs, one of which the FDA used when pentobarbital was discovered last year. Each product was tested at least twice to make sure our results were accurate. Hundreds of media organizations have carried our story, and with it, people from across the country are following how Smucker's, the brand owner, and the FDA are handling the pentobarbital contamination. Different lots, different stores, same problem. A lethal drug used to primarily kill cats and dogs, never allowed to be used on animals in the food supply, showing up in what you feed your pets.
Say, where does it come from? It comes from euthanasia of animals using that euthanasia drug. So these animals could be dogs, they could be cats, they could be horses. But how is it getting into the pet food?
Dr. Nicholas Dodman is the former director of the Animal Behavior Program at Tufts University.
Best case scenario for pet food companies is they're unaware. Maybe that is their state of knowledge, they do not know. But someone further down that chain is slipping these things in and it's getting there.
While the levels we discovered were not lethal, pentobarbital is never permitted in the food supply at any concentration. Smucker's has reported the source of the pentobarbital as beef fat from cattle and no other animal. Problem is, beef fat isn't even an ingredient on the label. Smucker's says the beef fat was in animal fat, yet the company won't say what, if any, other animals they tested for.
There are things that seem to be missing in their report.
Dr. Sean Callan is the Director of Operations and Quality at Ellipse Analytics, the lab that conducted our tests for pentobarbital.
So the thing about DNA testing is you have to sort of decide ahead of time what you want to look for. You know, so if you decide that you want to look for beef and ocelot and unicorn, and then you can say, yep, we only found beef. But did you look for horse? Did you look for canine? Did you look for feline? It'd be nice to know these things.
We asked Smucker's what animals they looked for in the DNA test. They would not answer, raising the question, did they instruct the lab to look for commonly euthanized animals like dog, cat, and horse? If they didn't, it would not be found. Smucker's issued a withdrawal of more than 30 types of Gravy Train, Kibbles and Bits, Skippy, and Old Roy canned dog food. A withdrawal serves the same end as a recall. The product comes off the shelves in every store in America. So why not call it a recall? The FDA tells us it was the fastest way to get the products out of stores.
The fact that this is a withdrawal and it's technically a recall is not how the law is supposed to work.
Bill Marler is one of America's premier foodborne illness attorneys.
I think it's a PR stunt I think it sounds better that it's a withdrawal as opposed to a recall. A withdrawal is these companies still have control of the product. A recall is a specific scenario where the product is in people's homes. They've already fed it to their children or their animals, and that product needs to be completely pulled out of the stream of commerce.
We've asked both Smucker's and the FDA how many cans of food were pulled off shelves. They declined to answer. A food industry executive who's overseen a number of national recalls conservatively estimated that number at more than 40 million. Smucker's tells us as a result of our story, it will test all products for the presence of pentobarbital. Dr. Callan says that's an excellent first step, but warns without more information, the results could be misleading.
It would be nice to know, again, how sensitive their test is going to be. You know, you can look for pentobarbital with a really insensitive measure and never find it. But if you're looking for it with the level of rigor you need in order to really rule out its presence, you know, that's a little bit harder to do.
We shared all of our lab data, methods, and protocols with Smucker's. We asked them to share theirs with us so our scientists could look it over. They declined. They actually declined to answer all but one of our latest questions. You can see all of that on our website.
Wow, you're back here in the studio. Lisa, a lot of things have happened as a result of your story.
Yeah, I wish we had time to talk about all of them. One of the things that has happened, though, is an online petition has launched to encourage Smucker's to recall all its pet food and upgrade its production standards. That petition has nearly 105,000 signatures, and what's important about that is consumers are speaking out. And it's not just Smucker's getting the message. These are the kinds of things that can drive industry-wide reform. Within hours of our investigation, the FDA launched its own into Smucker's subsidiary Big Heart Brands, the makers of Gravy Train, Kibbles and Bits, Old Roy, and Skippy dog foods. At issue, a rendered fat ingredient that is the boiled byproduct of carcasses that contain the euthanasia drug pentobarbital.
The latest class action lawsuit against the company alleges that the FDA found pentobarbital in the company's fat supply at levels at least 80 times higher than what we discovered in products on the shelves, and that the company retained a sample of that fat from a full year earlier in 2017, with levels of pentobarbital more than 50 times higher than our results that prompted the recall. Attorney Rebecca Peterson.
It is an important fact because they retained it, yet they didn't test it, or they did test it, and yet they still went forward by including that tallow in the contaminated dog food.
From the onset, the company maintained that the pentobarbital was not to be of concern to consumers. It characterized the levels in pet food as extremely low. Pentobarbital is illegal at any level, as it is a lethal drug. The company states its top priority is the safety and quality of its products. The revelation that pentobarbital has existed in the company's supply chain for more than a year appears to contradict its assurance to consumers of a comprehensive testing program that is used to assess the safety and quality of ingredients upon receipt. An unsurprising contradiction to food safety attorney Bill Marler.
Sometimes industry just doesn't want to be transparent. And I think they missed the boat because consumers are pretty understanding of mistakes that get made in the food supply. They aren't so understanding when they think that the government and the industry are hiding things from them.
In a statement, Smucker's did not address the failures of its previous comprehensive testing program, but told us that although the company has robust quality assurance procedures in place, we are committed to enhancing sourcing and supplier oversight procedures to help ensure this does not happen again. Court documents allege the source of contaminated fat as the company's supplier, JBS, itself the subject of investigations and recalls for everything from E. coli and the inhumane treatment of animals to rotten meat and product contamination dating back to at least 2009. In a statement, JBS did not address those issues, but stated it has modified its procurement process and will divert all third-party sourced materials to non-edible production until the company can ensure these materials meet its high standards for quality and safety. Peterson says they're seeking more than remedies for affected consumers.
That these companies become transparent and honest as to what they're including in the dog food. pets are viewed as family, and consumers want to know and expect that these companies are transparent and honest in what they put on their labels